High above the world, where the sky turned deep blue before dawn, the sacred realms hung like bright islands in a vast dark sea. Temples of white stone floated on clouds, silver rivers moved through the air, and bells rang softly in the wind. That quiet beauty was now broken because a wound in the heavens had opened without warning, and people called it the abyss. It was a hungry rift that swallowed light, cracked sacred ground, and made even brave hearts feel small. The danger was simple and terrible. If the abyss kept growing, it would not stop at one realm, but spread across every world and erase the balance that held all life together. Arjuna stood at the edge of a broken sky bridge and watched the far horizon bend around the dark wound. He was a young warrior, a man with black hair tied back, steady eyes, and the calm but restless spirit of someone who wanted to do what was right. He was known for skill with a bow, quick feet, and a strong sense of duty. Yet he still carried doubt like a hidden stone in his chest. He did not want glory. He wanted the worlds to remain whole. That was why his name mattered now when the old sign said a chosen fighter would rise. Near him stood Krishna, a wise man with long dark blue hair and a gentle light around his skin, wearing simple golden cloth that shone as if it had caught sunrise itself. Krishna did not speak like a warrior, but like a guide who saw farther than anyone else. He wanted balance to endure, and he knew Arjuna would need more than strength to face what was coming. Far above the broken bridge, another presence stirred, Shiva, a great divine being with long white hair and ash marked across his skin, watched from a mountain of clouds as ancient seals around the heavens began to crack. Shiva was not there to fight as a man would fight. He was waking the oldest forces in creation, because only those deep powers could keep the cosmic order from falling apart. As the FIRST Chinese letter, no, as the FIRST Chinese letter, wait, as the first tremor shook the sky, Krishna turned to Arjuna and said in a voice as calm as moonlight that the time of waiting had ended. The chosen blade was ready, forged from shattered starlight and held in a temple vault beneath the clouds. It was not a common weapon. It was made when a star broke apart in the ancient age, and its pieces were gathered by divine hands so they could cut through darkness without feeding hatred. Arjuna had to wield it with a clear heart because the blade would answer only to discipline, truth, and devotion. If his mind turned to fear or pride, the weapon would feel heavy and dim. That was the first rule of this battle, and Krishna made sure Arjuna understood it before they took a single step. They flew through the sky on a narrow path of light, and the air around them shook with deep thunder. Below, whole realms were already in trouble. One had lost its rivers of fire and now flickered like a dying lantern. Another had its prayer towers pulled sideways by invisible force, as if the sky itself had forgotten how to stay still. Arjuna saw frightened guardians trying to hold their posts, only to be forced back by waves of black mist rising from the abyss. He wanted to rush in and strike immediately, but Krishna stopped him with one hand. The enemy was not just a place. It was a force that fed on rash action, panic, and broken trust. The abyss widened whenever fear spread faster than courage. That made every choice important. The first battle came fast. A shattered gate between realms cracked open, and from it poured creatures made of smoke and broken starlight with hollow eyes that reflected other people's doubt. They did not speak, yet their meaning was clear. They surged forward to overwhelm the sky root and cut Arjuna off from the temple vault. Arjuna drew the divine blade, and its edge lit up in a cold white glow. He moved with sharp speed, cutting through storm, wind, and shadow forms, while Krishna's voice guided him from the light behind. Krishna did not shout commands. He spoke simple truths. Hold your breath, watch the center, move when fear moves. Arjuna listened, and each strike became cleaner, calmer, and stronger. He did not win by wild force. He won by staying still inside his own heart while the sky raged around him. Yet the victory did not last long, because the creatures were only a shield for something worse. On the far side of the broken gate, Arjuna saw a massive field of drifting war ruins with broken pillars, torn banners of light, and fallen constellations scattered like gems. At the center stood a dark throne made from twisted fragments of old sacred seals. There he met the true hand behind the chaos, a tall figure named Vance, a fallen keeper who had once guarded the border between realms. Vance was a man with pale gray hair, sharp eyes, and black armor lined with red lines that pulsed like veins. He was not destroying the heavens for fun. He believed the old balance had become weak and unfair, and he wanted to tear it open so a new order could be born under his control. He thought the sacred realms had grown soft, And he had chosen the abyss as a tool because it would erase the old rules and leave only his own power. That made him dangerous in a cold and understandable way. He wanted to be the one who decided what the universe should become. He smiled when he saw Arjuna, because he knew the hero was still learning. He told Arjuna that the blade would never save a broken order, only delay its end. Then the battlefield exploded into motion. Thunder cracked, light shields shattered, floating stones spun through the air. Arjuna attacked with quick, precise swings, but Vance moved like a shadow behind smoke, always slipping away before the final blow landed. Krishna called out that the abyss was growing stronger wherever anger and pride rose highest. Arjuna began to understand the deeper trap. Vance wanted him to fight in rage, because rage would feed the rift. So Arjuna changed. He stopped chasing only the enemy in front of him and started protecting the wounded space around them. He used the blade to cut open black knots in the sky. Sealing cracks before they spread, he shielded frightened guardians who were losing their footing. He moved as a defender, not an avenger, and that choice changed the tone of the battle at once. Vance frowned, because his plan was failing. Then the heavens shook again and a new sign appeared. Far beyond the war zone, Shiva opened his eyes. His awakening sent a pulse through the sacred layers of the cosmos, and old towers of power began to rise from sleep. This was the second rule of the universe. The balance could not be restored by one blade alone. It needed the old divine powers to answer. Each in its own way, Shiva was not saving the world in a simple flash of force. He was steadying the broken structure beneath it, giving Arjuna a path to continue. Krishna explained this while light storms raged around them. The real battle was not only against Vance, it was against the spread of chaos itself, and against the fear that made every realm turn against the next. Arjuna listened, and for the first time he understood that he was not chosen because he was the strongest. He was chosen because he could learn to carry responsibility without letting it harden his heart. As they crossed deeper into the war zone, the abyss revealed another surprise. Inside its dark opening, Arjuna saw memories of the sacred realms, moments of peace, prayer, laughter, and old promises. The rift had not appeared from nothing. It had been formed over time by neglect, greed, and the slow crack of broken trust between guardians who once worked together. Vance had not created that wound, but he had fed it, believing it could be used and controlled. This revelation stunned Arjuna, because it meant the enemy was not only outside. The universe had been wounded from within, and the final repair would require more than battle skill. It would require truth. Krishna told Arjuna that now he must go to the heart of the abyss where the last seal had been broken. There he would face Vance again, but also the fear inside himself. Arjuna gripped the divine blade, felt its light answer to his steady hand, and flew toward the dark opening as Shiva's ancient force rolled across the skies behind him. The sacred realms trembled, the war horns sounded from distant towers, and the path ahead disappeared into black light. Arjuna did not know if he would return the same way, but he finally knew who he was. He was not a boy chasing victory. He was a guardian chosen to carry light into the place where light had almost been lost, and the next step would lead him straight into the heart of the abyss. Arjuna fell through the dark opening as if the sky had forgotten him, and the world above became a thin ring of trembling light. Behind him, Shiva's force still rolled across the heavens, not as a roar, but as a deep ancient pressure that told every sacred gate to stay open a little longer. Arjuna kept both hands tight on the divine blade of starlight, and its silver edge glowed in short, steady flashes against the black wind. He did not know where the abyss would carry him, but he knew why he had come. If that wound in reality stayed open, the sacred realms would keep losing their strength, their prayers would turn to fear, and all the guarded places above would slowly break apart. Krishna's voice still lived in his mind, calm and clear, telling him that courage was not loud, and that a true guardian walked forward even when the path disappeared. Arjuna was that guardian now, and for the first time, he did not feel ashamed of the weight in his chest. He felt it fully, and he carried it anyway. The fall ended without warning, and Arjuna landed on a wide black plain that seemed made of ash, stone, and old broken light. The ground pulsed under his boots like a sleeping heart, and pale cracks moved through it in long lines as if the abyss itself was alive. Far above him there was no sky, only a ceiling of swirling shadow and torn stars that moved like slow water. Broken pillars stood around the plain, half buried in dark dust, and each one had marks from an older age, when sacred power had once tried to hold this place shut. Arjuna rose slowly and looked around, careful and alert. He could feel that he was not alone. Somewhere in the dark, something watched him with patient, cold purpose, and that made his skin tight. Then a soft light appeared behind a fallen arch, and Krishna stepped into view as if the darkness had only opened a space for him. He was a man with long, dark blue hair, warm, glowing skin, and gentle eyes that seemed to hold sunrise inside them. His golden robes moved without wind, and his peaceful face carried no fear at all. He mattered to Arjuna because he was not there to fight for pride or glory. He was there to keep Arjuna from losing his heart inside the dark. Krishna looked at the broken ground, then at the sword in Arjuna's hand, and said in a calm voice that the abyss was not only a place of ruin, it was also a prison built from old fear, old guilt, and old lies. That was why Vance had chosen it. He had not come here to rule a dark kingdom. He had come to force the heavens to face what they had ignored for far too long. Arjuna did not understand at first, so Krishna led him across the shifting plain toward a wide hall cut into the black stone. Inside that hall, the walls were lined with shattered symbols of the sacred order, and the air carried the smell of dust, cold iron, and fading prayer. Krishna explained the truth in simple words because Arjuna needed simple truth more than grand speeches. Long ago, Vance had been one of the guardians. He wore the same sacred light once, and he defended the same realms Arjuna now fought for. But over time, Vance saw the same thing again and again. The guardians grew proud. They protected the heavens, but they also became careless. They trusted their own strength so much that they forgot how fragile the worlds below had become. Vance begged the council to strengthen the seals between the realms, but they ignored him. He warned them that if the barrier stayed weak, something hungry would eventually find a crack. When they laughed at him, he chose a terrible answer. He tore open the abyss himself, not because he loved destruction, but because he wanted to force everyone to wake up. He believed that only a wound large enough to shake the sacred realms would make them remember what they had forgotten. That made his choice dangerous, wrong, and deeply sad because his fear had become a weapon. Arjuna listened, and for the first time, he saw the enemy as more than a shadow. Vance was a fallen protector, a man who had turned pain into a cruel lesson, and that made him even harder to face. Then the hall shook and black light spread across the floor like spilled ink. Vance stepped out of the far end of the chamber, tall and severe, with pale gray hair, sharp eyes, and black armor lined with dark red glow. His torn, high-collared cape hung behind him like a broken banner, and every step he took sounded heavy and final. He was not smiling, but he was calm, and that calm made him more frightening than anger would have. He looked at Arjuna as if he were measuring a test that had taken too long to arrive. Vance said that Arjuna had finally come, and that the sacred realms had hidden behind comfort for too many ages. He said that every guardian before Arjuna had chosen silence over truth, and that the abyss was the only language strong enough to make them listen. Arjuna answered that waking the worlds did not have to mean breaking them. He said there had always been another way, one built from trust instead of fear. Vance laughed once, not loudly but with bitter certainty, and told him that trust had already failed. Then he raised one armored hand, and the black floor split into moving shadows that rushed forward in a wide wave. Arjuna met them with the divine blade of starlight, and the sword burst with bright blue-gold sparks as he held his ground. The clash was fierce, but it was not a simple fight of strength. Every strike forced Arjuna to see the old wound inside Vance, and every defense made Vance more sure that the world only understood pain. The shadows pressed hard, trying to overwhelm him, and Arjuna nearly stumbled when the ground shifted beneath his feet. But Krishna's voice returned to him again, reminding him that a calm heart shines brighter than fear. Arjuna steadied his breathing, lowered his shoulders, and let the blade answer with clear white light. That change mattered at once. The sword grew brighter, and its star sparks drifted farther through the chamber, touching the cracked walls and turning them silver for a moment. Vance paused because he had expected force but not peace. Arjuna moved forward not with rage but with purpose, and that made his steps more certain than before. The divine blade struck the shadow wave apart, and the broken pieces scattered into the floor like fading smoke. Vance stepped back for the first time, his eyes narrowing because he could see that Arjuna was no longer fighting to prove himself. He was fighting to protect others, and that difference carried real power. But then the abyss itself answered the battle. Deep beneath the chamber, something opened with a low, hollow sound, and a giant column of darkness rose behind Vance like a living wall. In that moment, a strange truth appeared to Arjuna. Vance had not only opened the abyss, he had also been holding it shut from the inside, using his own power to keep the rift from swallowing the entire hall. The ruin was real, but so was the restraint. Vance had trapped himself inside his own mistake, and every day he had chosen to remain there rather than let the hungry dark spread any farther. That revelation hit Arjuna hard because it changed the shape of the enemy in front of him. Vance was not simply destroying the sacred realms. He was trying to control the disaster he had created, even while his methods kept making it worse. Arjuna lowered his blade a little, and that small motion changed the whole chamber. He asked Vance why he had not simply returned and faced judgment. Vance's face tightened, and for the first time, his cold voice carried something close to pain. He said the Guardians would have locked the gates, hidden the truth again, and continued pretending the realms were safe. He said the sacrifice would have been the same either way, but at least this way. The heavens could not ignore the warning. Arjuna heard the fear beneath the cruelty, and he finally understood that Vance had built his whole life around one terrible idea. He believed pain was the only thing strong enough to teach the proud. Yet Krishna had taught Arjuna something stronger, a heart that trusts can stand where fear always falls apart. So Arjuna took one slow step toward Vance and offered him a chance to stop. Not as a prize, not as surrender, but as a path back. Vance stared at him in silence, clearly shaken by the offer because no one had spoken to him that way in a long time. For one brief moment, it looked as if the dark armor around him might crack from the inside. Then the abyss trembled again, harder this time, and the entire hall began to tilt. Deep in the black ceiling above, a second opening started to form, and from it came a violent pull that threatened to drag both men downward. Vance turned toward the N-E-W Chinese letter, 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 crack. And his eyes widened with real alarm because even he had not planned for this. Arjuna raised the divine blade of starlight as the floor split wider under their feet, and Krishna's glowing figure stepped closer through the falling dust. His voice steady as he warned that the abyss was waking up faster than anyone expected. The chapter closed not with peace, but with a clear and dangerous truth. The real heart of the abyss was still deeper below, and Arjuna would have to go even farther if he wanted to save both the realms above and the man standing before him. Dust rolled through the shattered chamber like a gray storm, and the broken floor groaned under Arjuna's boots as the world seemed to split in two. Below him, the abyss pulsed with black mist and broken starlight, while above him, the last safe path to the upper realms was already falling apart. Arjuna stood in his layered white, gold, and deep blue armor, his red sash snapping in the wind, and he kept the divine blade of starlight raised because he knew the danger was no longer far away. Krishna stepped closer through the haze, his long dark blue hair glowing softly in the dim light, his golden robes steady despite the shaking ground, and his calm eyes told Arjuna that the warning was real. Krishna was not here as a soldier and not here as a king, but as a guide who carried a burden too heavy for one person alone. He wanted Arjuna to understand that the abyss was waking because someone had forced old seals open too early, and if they failed now, the wound below them would spread far enough to swallow every world connected to it. Vance was the reason the trap had been set this deep, and Vance mattered because he had once guarded these sacred paths before he chose rage, secrecy, and control over trust. Arjuna did not yet know the full reason for that fall, but he understood the simple truth right away. If the abyss reached its heart fully, nothing above would stay safe for long. The shaking grew stronger and the chamber walls cracked open as if they were made of dry clay. Krishna lifted one hand and a soft ring of light spread around Arjuna and himself, holding back the dust for a moment so they could breathe and think. He spoke in a low, steady voice, and he explained the rule that made the abyss so dangerous. The abyss did not only open space beneath the earth because it also listened to fear, doubt, and anger, and it fed on those feelings to widen itself faster. That was why Vance had chosen this place, because Vance believed divine power had hidden the truth about the lower seals, and he wanted to force the heavens to answer by threatening everything they protected. Krishna did not defend Vance's methods, but he did reveal that Vance had once been one of the best guardians of the old order, a man who had studied the seals for years and found signs that part of the sacred record had been changed. Arjuna listened closely, his calm brown eyes narrowing, because he had expected a hungry enemy, not a betrayed guardian with a reason that sounded almost human. Then a harsh laugh echoed through the torn chamber, and Vance stepped out from behind a broken pillar with his pale gray hair falling across sharp eyes and a cold, hard face. His black armor glowed with dark red lines, his torn high collar moved like a shadow in the wind, and he looked less like a monster than a man who had decided that mercy was just another kind of lie. Vance wanted one thing above all else, and that was the truth about what lay beneath the abyss, because he believed the gods had hidden something there that had cost countless lives in silence. He looked at Krishna and said that if the sacred order would not speak openly, then he would make the world tremble until it had no choice. Arjuna stepped forward before Krishna could answer, and the divine blade of starlight flashed white silver and blue gold in his hand. He did not rush in anger, because his strength had never come from rage alone, and that calm was what made the blade shine brighter. Vance attacked first, sending a wave of dark force across the broken floor, and the clash that followed sent sparks and stone chips in every direction. Arjuna blocked the strike, slid backward over the cracking edge, and used the red sash at his waist to swing himself away from a falling slab that vanished into the darkness below. Krishna moved behind him with impossible quiet, his glowing aura widening as he shielded the widening gap, and Arjuna realized that Krishna was not only protecting him, but also holding the chamber together long enough for one final choice. Vance pressed harder, his voice rising with years of pain he had kept locked away. He said the seals had been built by divine hands, but they had also been sealed with divine lies, and someone had erased the reason from history so no one would question the cost. Arjuna saw the anger in him, but he also saw fear, because Vance was not only trying to break the world. He was trying to prove that his suffering, and the suffering of everyone lost in the hidden years, had never been ignored by accident. That truth twisted the fight in Arjuna's mind, because a clear enemy was easy to face, but a wounded enemy who believed he was right could drag the whole world into ruin while still thinking he was saving it. Then the floor split wide enough to reveal a second chamber beneath them, and cold wind rushed up from below like a living breath. In that opening, Arjuna saw moving shadows, broken rings of ancient stone, and a deeper blackness at the center that seemed to stare back. This was the heart of the abyss, or at least the path to it, and it was not empty. Shapes moved inside the darkness, not fully formed, but restless and aware, as if the abyss had begun to remember itself. Krishna's voice cut through the shock, calm but urgent, and he told Arjuna that the lower heart was not just a pit, it was a lock. Long ago, the sacred order had sealed away a force that could twist the balance between worlds, but that seal had been maintained by a promise, not only by power, and someone had broken the promise first. Arjuna finally understood why Krishna had never spoken all the way before. Krishna had not been hiding the truth to control him. He had been waiting until Arjuna was strong enough to hear that the divine path was flawed, and that even the protectors of light could make terrible mistakes. That was the twist Arjuna needed, because it changed the whole fight. Vance was still wrong to use the abyss as a weapon, but he had not imagined the wound in the world. He had found evidence that the wound was already there, hidden by those who feared shame more than danger. Before Arjuna could answer, Vance shouted that he would descend alone if he had to, because the truth below would prove that the gods had abandoned their duty long ago. Then he leaped into the darkness, disappearing into the black wind before either Arjuna or Krishna could stop him. Arjuna ran to the edge and looked down, but the abyss below was turning, as if it knew his name. For one hard moment, he wanted to jump after Vance on instinct alone, because every lesson he had learned told him to stop the enemy before the damage spread. But Krishna placed a warm hand on his shoulder, and that simple touch steadied him. Krishna said that chasing Vance blindly would only feed the abyss's hunger, because the lower heart was already reacting to conflict, and it would grow stronger if they acted without balance. Arjuna closed his eyes, breathed once, and made the harder choice. He lowered the blade slightly, not in surrender but in control, and the light around the sword deepened until tiny sparks drifted from its edge like falling stars. That was the blade answering not to force but to resolve. Together, Arjuna and Krishna stepped to the edge of the shattered chamber and prepared to descend by the narrow stone ribs that still held above the void. Far below, Vance's dark armor flashed once in the moving mist, showing that he had landed somewhere on a lower ledge and was moving toward the heart alone. He had become more dangerous now, not because he was stronger, but because he was certain. He believed that if the truth did not come willingly, then all sacred walls deserved to fall. Arjuna looked at Krishna and asked the one question that mattered most. If the gods had hidden part of the truth, then who could he trust now? Krishna answered with a sad, honest smile and said that trust was not blind faith, but a choice made again and again, even when the path was broken. Then the ground gave another deep groan beneath them, the abyss pulsed wider, and Arjuna took his first step down into the deeper dark, knowing this was not the end of the battle, but only the place where the real one was about to begin. The broken chamber opened into a vast hollow beneath the world, and the air felt cold, still, and heavy with fear. Black stone walls rose on every side, while pale light from the abyss poured through cracks above like a sick moon. Arjuna stepped down first, his black hair tied back and his white, gold, and deep blue armor catching the weak glow. He was young, but he carried himself like a man who had already chosen duty over comfort many times before. Beside him moved Krishna, a wise man with long dark blue hair, warm glowing skin, and calm eyes that seemed to hold a steady light even now. Behind them came Shiva, a powerful divine man with long white hair, ash-gray marks, and stormlit strength in every step. They all knew the danger now, and the danger was simple to understand. If the abyss opened fully, it would swallow the sacred paths above, tear apart the balance between truth and lies, and leave the world without any guide at all. The deeper they went, the more the floor trembled under their feet, and the more the dark air seemed to breathe around them. Arjuna kept asking the same silent question in his heart because Krishna's answer still echoed there. Trust was not blind faith, trust was a choice made again and again. That sounded wise, but it also sounded painful because a choice had to be made when fear was strong. Then the darkness ahead shifted, and a tall figure stepped out from the shadow of a fallen pillar. It was Vance, the villainous guardian with pale gray hair, sharp eyes, black armor marked with dark red glowing lines, and a torn cape that hung like a broken banner. He had once protected the sacred order, and that fact mattered because it explained why he knew so much about the hidden seals below. His face was cold, but his voice carried something deeper than anger. He believed the gods had lied for ages, and he believed the truth had been hidden because the gods were afraid of human freedom. He wanted to seal the abyss forever, even if it meant locking the whole realm into strict control, because in his mind, a chained world was safer than a free one. Arjuna did not raise his blade at once. He asked Vance why he had turned on the order, and the answer came with no delay, because Vance had been waiting for someone to finally listen. Long ago, he had watched the abyss grow in secret each time the gods fought among themselves. He had begged for the truth, but the heavens had given him silence and command instead. Then he had seen villages tremble, temples crack, and sacred seals weaken, while the gods still demanded obedience from everyone below. Vance said that the gods did not just hide danger, they also hid their mistakes. That was the twist buried inside the whole journey, and it landed hard because it changed the shape of the story. The gods were not simple villains, but they were not fully honest either. They had sealed away part of the truth to keep order, and their silence had helped the abyss grow. Vance saw this and made his own harsh answer. He would take control, shut every gate, and force peace through fear if he had to. Arjuna felt the weight of that logic because it was not empty cruelty. It was a broken hope twisted into steel. Krishna listened with sad eyes, and Shiva stood silent because both knew that fear could build a prison that looked like safety. Then the chamber shook again, and the abyss above them pulsed wider, sending black mist down through the open cracks. Broken starlight fragments drifted in the air like shattered glass, and each one carried a low hum that made the skin ache. Vance lifted his hand, and dark red lines on his armor flared brighter. From the floor rose heavy chains of shadow, not alive in a cruel way, but moving like tools shaped by fear and control. They wrapped around columns and snapped toward Arjuna, trying to pin him in place. Arjuna answered with the divine blade of starlight, a radiant sword with a white-silver blade and a blue-gold hilt, its edge brightening as he moved with courage instead of panic. He cut one chain free, then another, and every clean strike sent a flash of pale light across the dark chamber. Shiva stepped in beside him, his body surrounded by ash-like energy and storm sparks, and he drove back the shadow chains with a deep, grounding force. Krishna did not attack first. He moved toward the center, where a cracked seal glowed on the floor, and his calm presence steadied the room like a hand placed over shaking water. He understood the real danger better than anyone. If the seal below the chamber broke completely, the abyss would not only open wider, it would also begin pulling at every hidden promise the gods had buried there, and the whole sacred order could fall apart. Arjuna saw Vance hesitate for the first time when Krishna spoke his name with quiet kindness. Krishna did not call him a monster, he called him a man who had carried fear too long. That mattered because it opened a crack in Vance's hard shell. For a brief moment, the villain's sharp eyes lost their cold shine, and the chamber felt almost human again. Vance admitted that he had once wanted to save everyone, but every time he trusted the gods, the burden grew heavier and the lies grew thicker. So he made a terrible promise to himself: he would never be powerless again. That was the last piece of his motive, and it made him easier to understand, even if it did not make him right. Arjuna then understood the true battle in front of him. He was not only fighting a man. He was fighting a fear that had turned into law. So he lowered his shoulders, breathed slowly, and chose trust again, not because the world was safe, but because fear alone could never build a better one. When Arjuna moved, the divine blade of starlight answered like a living star. He ran straight through the shadow field, his cloak whipping behind him, and every step matched his steady heart. Vance met him with a brutal clash of dark power and control, forcing Arjuna back across the broken stone. The impact sent a wave through the chamber, and one of the ancient pillars collapsed with a loud crash into the darkness below. Still, Arjuna did not give up. He remembered Krishna's words, and he remembered every person who could be lost if he failed. That memory gave him strength without hatred. Shiva then stepped forward and revealed the final truth of the lower seal. The abyss had never been a simple wound from outside. It had grown from a hidden split between the gods themselves, a crack made when fear was valued more than honesty. The seal could not be restored by force alone, and it could not be closed by hiding the truth again. It needed a clear heart, a willing choice, and a promise that the truth would no longer be buried. That was why Arjuna had been brought here, not as a weapon, but as a bridge between power and honesty. Vance heard that truth and roared in rage, because it shattered the only plan that had ever made sense to him. He unleashed everything left in his armor, and the dark red lines across his chest burned like warning flames. The floor split wider, and the abyss pulled upward with a hungry roar that shook the chamber to its core. Krishna raised both hands, and his golden robes glowed with a soft, steady light that pushed back the mist. Shiva joined him, and his stormlit power locked into the broken seal below, holding it still long enough for Arjuna to act. This was the moment of choice, the moment that defined the whole journey. Arjuna did not strike at Vance with rage. Instead, he turned the blade toward the living tear in the floor and poured all his focus into the light of courage, truth, and trust. The blade shone brighter than before, and the bright edge did not cut like a weapon alone. It became a seal of honest will. The abyss screamed without sound as the light pressed into its heart, and the black mist thinned, twisted, and then collapsed inward. Vance stumbled back, overwhelmed, not destroyed, but finally forced to face the result of his own fear. For the first time, he looked less like a ruler and more like a tired man who had carried the wrong answer for too long. Then the chamber grew quiet, and the deep groaning in the ground slowly faded. The abyss remained above as a scar in the sky, but it was smaller now, weaker, and no longer tearing itself wider. The lower seal held because it had been reforged with truth instead of secrecy. Arjuna stood with his sword lowered, breathing hard, and he finally understood what had changed inside him. He had begun this journey wanting clear answers from the gods, and he had ended it knowing that no great truth would ever be simple. Yet he had also learned that trust was not a gift from perfection. It was a promise made again and again by imperfect hearts. Krishna looked at him with that same sad, honest smile, but now it carried pride as well. Shiva gave one slow nod, like an ancient mountain agreeing that the right choice had finally been made. As for Vance, he sank to one knee among the broken stones, no longer a conqueror, but no longer fully lost either. He had been driven back by the truth he tried to control. Above them, the first pale edge of dawn touched the cracks in the world, and the light looked fragile but real. Arjuna lifted his gaze toward it, and for the first time, he did not ask who could be trusted. He knew the answer now. He could trust the choice he made, the people who stood beside him, and the honest path they would build together from this day forward.